characteristics, the inner ingredients of entrepreneurship. For many people, entrepreneurship's not the right choice, and really in many cases a home-based business is not the right choice. So I want you to pay close attention and follow some of the recommendations I make, because when you do it wrong, it's much better to have done nothing than to have done the wrong thing with your career and life. It can be very painful. One of the old stories is, you want to make a small fortune? Good, I'll tell you how. In the Northeast, they always say the best way to make a little fortune is to start with a big fortune and buy a Vermont country inn. California, they say the best way to make a little fortune is start with a big fortune and buy a vineyard up in Sonoma. And that's why I say I want to caution you a little bit about home-based business is not for everyone. So I want to tell you a little bit about the first key principle you should look at in the home-based business field, and I call it the rising tide. You know, the rising tide raises all boats, and it's an awful lot better to be in a boat that's raising as you're paddling than it is to be in a sinking ship. And there's several ways to put that to work, but I'll tell you that my office in Beijing, China, where we have 9 people working for the CEO Club, the administrative assistant said, "Gee, Joe, you know, I like to have my own business. I'm working in my own business field, and I was thinking of getting a dress shop." And I said, "Gee, you know, it's such a classic that here you are trying to sell ice to the Eskimos, dresses to the Chinese. Every man always drifts towards a boatyard or a golf yard. A woman drifts towards cosmetics. And seldom are those rising tides." So let me give you a couple ideas in spotting rising tides so that you can pick a field. It may not be your personal expertise. It may not be a hobby. But it's sure easier to make money repairing iPads or iPods or iPhones than it is trying to sell dresses in China to the Chinese. Years ago, the way I used to make this same point about rising tide was to say, you want to know a field that's increasing? Go to the newsstand and go to the magazine section at the airport and look at the magazines, and then watch to see which new magazines are coming in. When is there a robotics magazine? When is there a healthcare magazine? And if you want to know where the magazine publishers look to see where rising tides are, they used to watch the newsletter publishers. And all you had to do was watch the newsletters and see when the first solar energy newsletter came out and when the second came out. Today that's changed, and what you want to look at are things like the Google AdWords and see which AdWords are suddenly increasing in popularity. And if you want to be even smarter, go to Yahoo or one of the Bing search engines and watch their AdWords and see where they're powered. Watch tweets. There's millions of ways to watch rising tides, watch the stock market. But keep in mind to yourself that a rising tide is much better than a sinking ship. Now let's talk about the characteristics of entrepreneurs and whether you really fit that profile. And I've got a couple of resources you're going to appreciate that are free and you're going to like. They're on my website, ceoclubs.org, and the first is a pretty easy, fun 26-question quiz called the Entrepreneur's Quiz. And it does a profile by measuring your traits, your personality, your interest against a profile of entrepreneurs to see if you have those characteristics. And, you know, just because you don't doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But it's kind of the 80-20 rule. You know, 80% of the time you shouldn't do it, but 20% it still works. And some of those quizzes are, you know, test of your abilities, test of your luck skills. Would you rather be lucky, or would you rather work hard? Are you the oldest child in the family, or are you the youngest child? Were your parents immigrants? There's 26. And if you go to my website, it's free, WWCEO Club, Business Resource Entrepreneurs Quiz. And I've got a self-scoring mechanism on that quiz that you'll find interesting. In fact, that quiz has been published, 100 million times. Playboy, Penthouse, Harvard Business Review, Journal of Marketing, all the airline magazines, Time Magazine. Back quite a while ago, that was a very popular product. The second test is an academic exercise, but you're going to still like it anyway. It was done by the head of the psychology department at Harvard, Dr. David McClellan, and it's a motivational profile to see whether you're really constituted to run your own business. If you look at the movie The Social Network about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, you see a good example of a highly motivated individual who from early birth is destined to be an entrepreneur and was willing to do whatever was necessary to get to the goal line and lost lots of friends. Friendships were not what turned him on. It was really getting that project to succeed. And as you watch and hear the story, it wasn't really money per se, it was achievement. And the Dr. David McClellan test, the motivational profile, it's a 30-question self-diagnostic test by the head of the psychology department at Harvard. And he measures your instincts and on your three variables: affiliation, power, and achievement. And he measures those needs that each of us have. We all want to be, have power, we all want to achieve, we all want to be liked, affiliation. And what you'll find is that achievement outscores the other two, power and affiliation, for entrepreneurs. For other classes of jobs, people, work habits, power or affiliation are higher. So you might want to take that test. It's free on my website. And those are two good resources. Now let me give you a third choice that's also on my website, because if you didn't find you were an immigrant son, daughter, you didn't like my story about Zuckerberg, you weren't the first child, maybe you ought to think about taking a franchise. In fact, for many people in mid-career, in their 40s, a franchise is a much better alternative because the business model has already been worked out. And as you might expect, on my website, we've got a free franchises quiz. It's kind of opposite the entrepreneur's quiz. You know, it kind of measures your ability to follow the rules. A good franchise or franchisor, someone running a franchise, is better than to follow the rules than he is to try, new experiments. Instead of McDonald's having, big beef, it has hot dogs. That's not going to work. You're much better to take franchise rules and follow them. Now, you're usually not better off buying a franchise from the franchisor. You're almost always better off buying a doggy franchise or a Five Guys fresh hamburger or whatever it is, a kindergarten training program, from a losing franchise. Franchises are just as unsuccessful as any category of small business. So before you start wanting to pay the big front-end fee for the license, go visit 100 other franchises and see who's available, what the story is from other franchisors. In fact, if you really want to get a good feel for choices of franchises, those franchise shows, the trade shows, run by the International Franchise Association out of Washington, D.C., are terrific opportunities to spend a day or two just walking up and down the aisle, looking who's got what service, seeing which franchises are drawing the crowds. But the good data, the hard data, always comes from visiting existing franchise owners. Now, usually the main problem with most franchises is not the franchise model. It's somebody's making it work. It's location. If you have a great location, you want to start an In-N-Out burger across the street from McDonald's. If it's a good location, even if you were selling hot dogs instead of good, healthy In-N-Out burgers, you're really better because you got a good location. So 90% of a franchise is location. So kind of before you run to look around at the choices, take a look at the opportunities that are available for good locations. If you see a good location, then you might want to start thinking about what's a good franchise to put in that good location. I'm backing up a little bit now just to remind you that this little 10-minute piece had to do with some of my books. I've got a book called Do You Have What It Takes? A book called How to Start, Financially Manage Your Own Small Business. A book called How to Start and buy a franchise. So you might want to look at those works, they're free on my website, and look at your own profile.